the Westborough Planning Board. I will remind everybody that there's a lot of people on the call, so if you could please mute your microphone until I've acknowledged you, or you can use if you click on the participants tab on the bottom, it'll tell you everybody that's on the call, and you'll be able to see if you're muted. And there's also a raise hand button, so if you want my attention, and you can raise your hand, and myself or Kristen or Jim Robbins will acknowledge you as soon as we notice it. So I'm going to read the governor's message that we have to read for virtual meetings. The Westborough Planning Board will hold a virtual meeting on Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westborough Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The meeting can be viewed on Verizon Channel 24 and Charter Channel 191, or live streamed online at westboroughTV.org. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, let's get back and see. Is Jim on yet? I still don't see him. All right. I think we'll need to get started. We're going to start with the project update, the Deer Slayer and Mount Pleasant intersection. And I'm going to ask Steve Durrett to. Oh,
Stephen, can I just, so I have 3 documents that were shared, the letter that you wrote to the planning board, and then 2 sets of plans. And then today I got this sealed gas line plan. So if you just want to let me know which one, if I'm supposed to be sharing, and then I can pull it up.
All right, so Steve Durrett, do you have a preference on which plan we show first? Steve, you're muted still. Well, this is off to a ringing start. Steve Durrett, you're muted. Okay, thanks. Do you have a preference as to which plan you want shown first?
If you can hear me, let's start with this one.
Okay.
This essentially is a plan that you approved, I'm going to say sometime in March. What was actually submitted was the meets and bounds of what you see here. Eventually, in order to have a recordable plan as well, we created this one. And this one is the most definitive, I think, for the construction of the cross-country gas line. Since that time, based on the action of the planning board, the meets and bounds of this easement was provided to the gas company and has been recorded. And so I believe this is a fait accompli in regards to the approval of the planning board and others at the time based on those discussions, which I think one of them was a public hearing. I think the other ones were follow-up discussions with the planning board. That's my recollection, and I think it's Jim's as well. He and I had a discussion on this one this afternoon. I hope that he does get on board.
Yeah, Steve,
Likewise,
Steve, can I
ahead.
interrupt you? I'm sorry. Jim Robbins is on now. So we're going
Good.
to confirm and let him introduce this to the board before we look at continue. Okay, Jim, are you?
Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for my technology glitch. I'm okay now. I got locked out for some reason, but I'm all right. So thank you. And thank you, Steve, for briefing the board in my absence. We did agree, as you know, the planning board agreed to allow this better option for the gas line coming off the intersection of Deerslayer with Mount Pleasant straight across the street and into the applicant's property. It's a much easier route for them where they don't have to remove ledge on Mount Pleasant Street. They don't have to build a retaining wall. They don't have to get easements from private property owners and take private property owners' trees. It's a much better route. I think in the long run, it'll be better for serving the residents in the subdivision as well. I didn't hear everything Steve said because I only just now joined the call. One of the things that Steve provided for us is a plan that shows the first few pages of the plan itself, where the gas line comes from Deerslayer, rather, across Mount Pleasant into their site, and then I think the first maybe one or two cross sections of elevation of the gas line. There is a full set. Since the board already approved this option, I sent the plans to the town engineer to review to make sure that they were acceptable before presenting them to the planning board for endorsement, because this needs to become part of the subdivision plan. Since this is a change in the utility, it should be here for future reference, because who knows how long all of us are going to be involved with this project. It's appropriate to have it become part of the definitive subdivision plans. That's what Steve has provided. At a future date, the board can endorse these plans when we're able to submit them for the board to sign. They obviously can't sign them remotely this evening, but I'd ask that Steve enlarge these plans so that the board can see the title and the date on the plans and have them vote to enter these into the record and make them part of the definitive subdivision plan. Now, I know the town engineer is on this call. I can see Lisa. I can also see the DPW director, Chris Payant. I would ask if they have any concerns for this plan at this time.
No, we have no concerns.
Chris, are you on the call?
Yep, I'm here. No concerns with what was briefed.
Okay. All right, so let's turn to the board for questions just on the gas line plan. Does anyone on the board have a question? I guess just speak up. I'll recognize you. All right, I didn't hear anyone jump in there, so I think we're all set. Why don't I'm not sure if that was somebody with a question. Why don't we move on to the other issues with this project, and we'll do the vote at the end. I think we had Jim, some other outstanding issues on this, and I'm going to turn it back to you for a minute.
Okay, thank you. As you know, the planning board had held a couple public meetings where we invited residents to discuss a couple options for the realignment of the intersection of Deerslayer with Mount Pleasant. A couple of those options were unacceptable. It was narrowed down to a new rotary at that intersection or a simple redesign of the existing Deerslayer intersection with a new stop line moved closer or further into the middle of the intersection. After examining that more closely in the recent past couple weeks, we found that the town fire truck as well as school buses are unable to navigate that intersection, making a right-hand turn up the hill without having the bumper of the truck leave the right-of-way, making a right-hand turn down the hill, both movements from Deerslayer, without entering into the oncoming lane, which is obviously an unsafe circumstance. Additionally, a truck the size of a fire truck or a school bus could not make a right-hand turn coming down Mount Pleasant, turning right onto Deerslayer without crossing into the oncoming lane on Deerslayer. None of those options are safe or acceptable options. That being the case, it's very difficult for us to make a decision that it's a safer alternative moving the stop line further into the intersection. So what are the possibilities to improve the line of sight on Mount Pleasant? One of the things that was discussed with the developers' representatives, and Steve Durrett was part of that, so I'll turn it to Steve shortly, was to clear the brush and any trees within the right-of-way looking up Mount Pleasant. In other words, if you were sitting at Deerslayer and you were going to make a left-hand turn across the intersection, how would we improve that line of sight? It would be by cutting back the brush and the trees that are within the public way. By doing that, we can improve the line of sight by probably 100 feet up the street. That would allow someone to safely see if there was traffic coming down the hill before trying to make a left-hand turn into oncoming traffic. I know that the town engineer visited the site with the applicant and their representatives last week and again yesterday morning. So we were able to identify, or they were able to identify, trees that could be cut, brush that could be cleared, that would improve that line of sight. That would make the current intersection a viable alternative better than what we have proposed for changing the realignment. That being the case, I'd like to ask for comments from either Mr. Durrett or the town engineer or the DPW director on that alternative.
Jim,
Well, I'll go first, I guess. Well, you can go first, Lisa, if you'd like.
I was just going to say, that's correct. That's what we talked about yesterday. I just wanted to add that we also talked about on the other side of the intersection, for about 30 feet or so, we were going to do some cutback and clearing there. So the other direction would be improved as well. That was it.
Yep, and you know, just I guess for the record, our discussion included all the things that were talked about and that you suggested, Jim, in your explanation, and we agreed to all of those, including extending the paving to the south end of the intersection so that we could pick up the gas company trench, which otherwise would just be a black stripe across the existing pavement, so that in fact we get an overlay from what otherwise was originally the end of the work, about halfway down the hill from the crest. Now we would continue the pavement all the way to the south end of the intersection at Mount Pleasant, and that would get us to pick up the paving, the base course as well as the finish course over the trench that the gas company would cut. As we all know, the gas company lays their own mains to the standards of the Commonwealth, and so that, I guess, is our contribution to the effort to make sure that the new pavement totally blends in. And so it's part of the reason why the other drawings are here was to try to encompass all the things that we've talked about over the months since we started this discussion last fall, so that in this discussion and at the planning board's ability to see all the things that we talked about in what we plan to do and what we are not going to do as a result of the gas line coming in from the south end of Mount Pleasant rather than from the north end from Edmund Brigham Way. And the reason why is because the gas company would not serve from that Edmund Brigham, because it's a stub off of the line that feeds Deerslayer. So as it turns out, this is the location that the gas company would serve the subdivision from. And it solves a lot of problems, as Jim mentioned, in terms of the potential for blasting in the street, for disturbances to people's front lawns, to removal of a stone wall, a lot of things that became unnecessary as a result of you know, this discussion between all the players that are here tonight, and many of you have been here in previous discussions as well. So I believe that the DPW, as well as my client, is in agreement with what we will do on behalf of the town in regards to Mount Pleasant, including everything that was on the original drawings except the retaining wall and the additional pavement that I mentioned tonight.
Okay, so my understanding then, Steve, is that the pavement will go from essentially Deer Slayer all the way up the hill to, not to Edmund Brigham, but to Road A, I think. I don't know if it has a name yet.
Well, the southern road that enters Mount Pleasant is called Meadowlark, and the other one that goes over the crest or beyond the crest and comes in from the north end is called Barred Owl. So we're going to the crest from Deer Slayer to the crest where the original construction was going to blend back into the road.
Okay. All right. Any comments from anything else from you, or Chris? Anything from you? The fire department's on the call, but I think this solution, I don't want to say eliminates their concern, but hopefully, you know, if they have any questions on this solution, then, you know, I'd like to hear them. Hazel, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Kristen, can you put up the intersection?
Yeah, just drag the drawing to the right.
Yeah, I want the intersection of Deer Slayer and yeah, that'll do it. I had a question for the fire department and for I guess Lisa. Was there any thought about cutting back the road? In other words, widening the road to go back, taking to the back where the town's line is? I realize you're taking some lawn away from the person who lives on that south corner there. But if you widen the intersection there, would that not make the turning lane coming out of Deer Slayer better access onto Mount Pleasant going south?
I'm not sure if it would or wouldn't. We would have to look at it. Might possibly have Waterman help us, but I will say that the contractor has agreed to, so from where the edge of pavement line is back to the property line, and that whole area has agreed to clear that all out for us. And so that whole line of sight is going to be improved.
Mm-hmm. But as I said, looking at it myself, I kept looking at it and wondering whether if we just increased the pavement there, in other words, took that all out, whether then coming out of Deer Slayer, the fire trucks could make the turn without going into the oncoming traffic lane.
Yeah, the problem becomes is that there is probably many choices that would work. It's just having the time and doing an analysis on each one takes a lot of time, and it does take some engineering work. So I think at this point, to help Steve get the project going, the items that they've agreed to yesterday are going to be a huge help to the DPW. And I really do think when you go down there, you'll see it's going to look much more improved. You're going to be able to see much better.
Right, no, I realize that on that basis. I mean, I just wondered, is the fire department feel that that's gonna solve their problem?
So the proposals that were
Jason,
drawn up,
Jason, can you just say your name so people?
sorry, Mark, Jason Persky, Deputy Fire Chief. The proposals that were presented to us took an intersection, in our opinion, and made it more difficult for us to traverse. I know Lisa worked pretty hard at trying to make it the best that she could, in conjunction with Waterman. Unfortunately, what it did was it didn't improve the turning. Visibility wise, it sounds like all of these proposals are going to make it, the latest proposals from yesterday are going to make it a lot better for everybody. I don't think, if you look at that intersection right now as it sits, the pavement's pretty wide. The proposals that were proposed to us over the last couple months, May and June, tightened up the pavement. I think if you leave it alone, it sets it up to be probably the best that it can be, unless you want to invest a lot of time and money on the intersection.
Okay, well, I mean, as long as the fire department is agreeable with that, that's my only question. If you're agreeable, fire department agrees that they will be able to cope with it, then I think it's great. I mean, I'm certainly agree with it there.
The other point I'll make, Hazel, is that we don't just look at it as our trucks being able to turn. You know, when we look at that intersection, one of the things that we look at is the school buses.
Right.
Their turning radiuses are probably about equivalent to our ladder truck. They don't turn very well. And that intersection, that intersection is really really a tough intersection to begin with. And I think kind of leaving it the way it is and with the modifications that they came up with yesterday, are probably the best alternative right now.
That's great. That's fine.
Chris, I think you were about to say something too.
This is Chris, DPW Director. No, I didn't have any additional comments. I was just going to respond to you, Mark, in terms of, you know, Lisa spoke for the DPW, and we're good with the course of action that's proposed here.
All right, thanks, Chris. Any other questions from the board then?
Mark, Jim Ball.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I went up there over the weekend again and sat, and I would agree that just that clearing that brush back will make an enormous difference. You know, I've kind of thought that from the beginning. I think that'll work very well. And also, you know, the willingness of Steve and his group to bring that pavement all the way down, I think is a big deal as well, just to make that smooth all the way so the plows aren't digging up several gaps and such. So I think this solution as it's presented, you know, is the best. That's all I had to say.
All right, Jim Robbins. First of all, anyone else from the board? Tim Paris, Tim Taylor? No? Okay.
No, I'm good.
All right. Jim Robbins, what other issues on this project? I know we've probably got a couple of votes we have to take at this point.
We don't have any other topics to discuss at this time. One thing that I discussed with Steve earlier today is that he and I would work together to put together a letter to the file and to the board and to the clerk, attaching this to the project file, noting that this change is that there's going to be no change to the intersection, but that there will be clearing. We're going to define that. And we want to memorialize that by having you take a vote to explain what the pavement requirements will be of the developer. I don't think you need to mention the realignment of Deerslayer and Mount Pleasant because we're not going to do anything. But what you do need to mention is that there will be a full overlay from the southerly extent of the subdivision at Meadowlark Lane or Meadowlark Road, I forget which it is, down to the intersection of Deerslayer and Mount Pleasant. That's important to note because the plans don't show that currently. We would then attach that to the project file.
Jim, if it helps, the southerly extent we measured out, they're going to stop approximately 30 feet before pole 35.
Okay.
Which, if that helps you define it.
Okay. Do we have a point for the northerly? Do you know?
It's approximately in front of house 41.
It's a little farther up the hill. It's than 41. I mean, the major work and the tree removal is at 41, but this work is defined on the existing drawings on this side of the crest, just beyond, that is just a little farther up the hill than the road opening for Meadowlark. So there's a hydrant up there, and we blend back into the existing road width approximately at the hydrant. And we discussed the tree hearing that we had, I don't know, I guess it was 2 Thursdays ago, anyway, 2 Thursdays ago, I'll leave it at that, where we had a couple of people from the public show up at the tree removal hearing. And based on the discussion there, at this point, the only tree that would be coming down that's alive is the triple oak at 41. We're blending the road just a few feet shorter than what the WDA drawings show in order to save one more tree on the right, which is that would be on the right headed north or up the hill, to satisfy the couple of people who came to that tree hearing, and it was agreed, I think, by all parties there that we could do it and still accomplish, what the WDA drawings showed. And it's my understanding that the triple oak is the owner at 41 wants it gone. At least that's what I was told. And so that as a result of the hearing and what was marked is the only tree that would come down. We've also agreed that there are 2 other dead trees a little farther down the hill towards Deerslayer that we'll remove those on as well in order to remove the public safety issue and save that effort that eventually would be necessary by the DPW.
Great.
So there's a lot of things in the discussion that I had with Lisa last Friday and John Fryer had with Lisa on Monday.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the efforts you're doing to save some trees and remove the dead ones. Jim Robbins, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Suggestion. Since the developer's contractor needs to move forward, toot sweet. I know that it's been marked in the field, the work that you're going to do. I have a question then for Lisa. Lisa, if we were to suggest to the board that they approve this evening the overlay of Mount Pleasant Street, subject to the marking in the field by the DPW, would that satisfy you? And then the applicant would show it on the plan. So we'd actually have a plan. We don't have a plan tonight, but I would ask the board to vote subject to the markings that are in the field. Do you feel okay with that now?
Yeah, I just will say on behalf of Steve, they agreed to do other things, like some milling in certain spots. So I don't know if you wanted a plan that shows all that or just the overlay limits. It doesn't matter to me. I'm pretty confident that the contractor knows exactly what I want. And as you know, I provided you with a cost estimate of that work that I believe it is to do that work. So I'll leave that part up to you.
So what I wanted to do was to have the board take a vote in a general fashion to allow the contractor to proceed while at the same time giving us, meaning the planning department, the engineering department, and the developer, time to memorialize this on a plan.
Oh, sure.
We would then put the plan in the file, and I'd have the board take another vote to approve that plan with a title and a date. So I just want to allow them to proceed because I know the contractor's on site and doing work. And I know that the gas company is not always on time. Let's put it that way. They could show up early and I don't want to hold them up. I want to let them proceed, but I want to get a drawing that's clear in the future. But in the meantime, the board needs to vote to allow them to proceed. So based on the markings that are in the field, do you feel that they can proceed?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Mr.
And I would agree that we would do an as-built of this work by whatever changes necessary to the existing DA drawing that's pertinent to this area of Mount Pleasant, and do the as-built on that drawing, which I think eventually we have to supply to the planning board anyway. And so it would encompass, you know, the work that was done at the direction of the DPW, and I think I would hope that not only do we have confidence in John Fryer's work, but also, you know, our word as the project to accomplish these things, that we now know dearly how long it's taken us to get to the point where, you know, this project can be accomplished to the benefit of the town.
Great, Steve. I do actually have a lot of confidence in you and in your management on this. So, Jim, you were going to suggest some language that you want to be here in a motion. Can I get that language?
So what I'll do is I'll put it in the chat and I'll do it right now. I'll type it up. How's that?
Okay. In the meantime, unless there's other questions from the board or comments, I'll give you a second to raise your hand. I'm going to make a motion. I don't hear anyone else speaking up, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the plan of the cross-country gas line location from Mount Pleasant Street to Blue Heron Court, dated 5/29/2020, by Waterman Design, WDA Design Group for Silver Hollow Estates LLC.
I'll second that, Mark. Tim beat me to it.
I think Tim Paris, you're with Tim Kohler.
Tim Paris.
With that? Okay, Tim Paris seconded. Any discussion on that motion alone from the board?
Nope.
No.
Okay, I will say all those in favor, starting with Jim Ball.
Yes, Mark.
Okay, Hazel,
Yes.
Tim Paris,
Yes.
Tim Kohler,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. That's a 5-0 vote on the revised or the additional plan for the gas line. Somebody ready? Are we ready with a motion on the? Okay. Just bear with us for a minute, please.
You have the motion.
Let me just read this. Okay. All right. I move that the planning board allow the applicant to proceed to execute paving and associated clearing along Mount Pleasant Street as marked in the field in the right of way on Mount Pleasant and as directed by the town DPW and engineering department.
Second.
Okay, Hazel seconded. Any discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, I'll do a roll call. All those in favor, Jim Ball,
Yes.
Hazel,
Yes.
Tim Paris,
Yes.
Tim Taylor,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. Okay, Steve, good luck out there, and we'll look forward to seeing the result.
So Steve, one point. Steve, you and I and Lisa should meet to get this on paper. If you want to have Waterman Design begin that, there's no timeline on that because you're going to execute the work. I mean, the as-built may be ready before a plan would be ready, but we should talk about how to get this on paper.
Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, the depiction on the drawing itself, you know, as built, I think based on direction from Lisa, we can eventually get it onto a planning board drawing as a revision to the drawing that represents this area. I think it's probably 3.45 through 3.48, something like that. That would encompass this part of Mount Pleasant Street.
That would be good. A memo explaining this, the location, and then a plan showing it.
Yep. And I'm sure that either Lisa or Bob will be frequently there while John Fryer's doing the work, so that it'll get done according to, you know, those directions in the field, including, you know, executing the markups that are in the street that were, you know, put there, I assume on Monday, but anyway, I know they're there.
Great. Steve, thanks a lot. We'll let you know if there's anything else. I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is a discussion of the West End traffic account.
Okay,
Jim Robbins.
Thank you very much, all. I appreciate your time and patience on this one.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And thank you to Lisa, the engineering department, DPW, and to the fire department for flagging these issues and helping us come to a good solution. Thank you. Your next agenda item is regarding an outreach from the Department of Public Works regarding an old account that we've had on file as a gift from Tufts University. We established a fund for what we call the West End traffic study. And that came about when Tufts University was undergoing their expansion for the office park that currently exists out off of Route 30, just over the border behind Tufts University. At the time, they did a traffic study that the town reviewed. We did a peer review, and they left us some additional money should we in the future wish to study any of the small roads that come in off of Route 30, like Glen Street, and then later on to Arch Street for traffic improvements in the future. It's not a lot of money. It's like $2,000. We received a letter from the Department of Public Works requesting and asking about the availability of that money to be used for drainage improvements. And as you know, the town departments can transfer money between departments called interdepartmental transfer. It's actually good that that letter was sent to us because that fund was established in 2005. It's been a long time, obviously, and we'd forgotten that the money was out there. I called DPW Director Chris Payne to discuss this, and we talked about another project that is currently beginning, which is called the Otis Street Corridor Traffic Study. That study is going to look at needed improvements along the Otis Street, Fisher Street, Smith Valley Parkway corridor. And we discussed how this money could be used for traffic improvements in the future. It's not a lot of money, but it would buy a pedestrian crossing signal. So we discussed whether it was better using this for that purpose, which was originally intended, versus transferring it to drainage improvements. And I don't want to put words in Chris's mouth. He's on the call. I'd ask him to chime in, but I feel the consensus was that it was better served being used on the Otis Street improvements in the future. Chris?
Chris, before you start, Farouk, I saw you join the call. Could you just mute your microphone until we're ready?
Okay.
Background noise. Thank you.
So just to follow up on what Jim was saying, I mean, the bottom line is we've identified a number of gift accounts that are pretty old, and there's pots of money sitting in them, and so this one happens to, for whatever administrative reason, happens to show up in our monthly accounting information. So honestly, I didn't realize it was the planning board's money. I thought it was ours and we were just going to spend it. So we discovered it's the planning board's, and obviously we had to ask permission, had the discussion with Jim. totally makes sense that if there's an opportunity out there to potentially use it towards the study, like what we're doing on Otis Street, that's, in my mind, totally makes sense and is appropriate. You know, we just see the money sitting there, and you know, we want to make sure it's planned to be used in whatever that purpose is, and so you know, I think this just allowed us to raise it to your awareness, and you know, now you know you have something you can potentially take advantage of in the near future if you chose to. So bottom line is it's not an issue if that money is allocated somewhere else, but it's, you know, I think it makes sense for the town to take advantage of all these pots of money that are out there that we've received for whatever purpose in the past, and so that's why we asked the question. So subject to your questions, those are my comments.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. So Hazel, I see your hand up. You have a question?
I just want to make a comment. I think just everyone should be aware of the fact, don't forget there's the new cemetery going in down on Route 30, down at that end, the west end. So, you know, there may be some use for that money for the access or who knows what else to the cemetery. So I would like to see the money remain at this point. You know, I just wanted to remind people of the cemetery there.
Okay, thanks, Hazel. So it sounds like we're going to just wait on that money till we need it for additional traffic study on the Otis Street corridor, which, you know, I think would include Glen Street, and of course that opens out to Route 30. I think that's a good solution. Does anyone else have any comments on that? Jim, do you need us to vote on anything, or we're just going to leave that alone?
So if you take no action, the money will remain where it is. It can be used in the future by the board for your purposes. What I would do tomorrow, if the board decides to do nothing, is send a reply to all those that were copied on the original request, which means the DPW, the town manager, and the town accountant, letting them know about the planning board's discussion and decision this evening. The money would remain where it is.
Okay, so unless there's some further discussion, I'm ready to move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is a continuance of the definitive plan decision for the Ridings 2. We have a draft decision that you've all had a chance to read. I'm going to turn this over to Jim Robbins to take us through that decision, and then we can make any edits or comments after that.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be the first time that I've reviewed a decision virtually.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
If we have edits, do you want to take us through it once, and then if we have edits, we'll go back to the appropriate section? I'd rather not have you interrupted since I just did. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I'm going to ask Kristen to do is if she would enlarge this so that I can read it, because I can't read it right now. And then I'm going to summarize it. I'm going to move through it as quickly as possible. The applicant's representatives have read this. Patrick Healy is here this evening from Thompson and Liston Associates, the project engineer. He and James Tatro, who worked on the project plans over the past 4 years, from concept plan to final definitive, have both read it and provided me with a comment which has been incorporated into the decision. You have the most recent set here. The changes that were made since the first draft that was sent to you yesterday are highlighted in yellow. There are a couple of substantive changes. Most of these are, some of these are typos, some of these are clarifications, some of these are date changes, all of which reflect the record, the project record. So I'm just going to proceed through this. I'm not going to mention all the plans and all the letters that we received during the project review. So Kristen, if you could just proceed. Can you enlarge that any?
So Jim,
Actually,
Joanne,
I'm
do
able
you
to.
have Jim, do you have your Zoom call on full screen?
I do now.
Okay, do you have people on the right side?
I do.
Okay, if you point to the line in between the document and the people, you'll get a sideways arrow. If you point about somewhere about the middle,
Yep.
if you drag that over to the right, you'll get fewer people on the right and the document will get larger.
Yep, I've already done that. So right now, so I can see it now, I can read it. So the, actually this version does not include the waiver that was requested to be added. So that I'm going to start with the applicant's request for waivers. As you know, we have rules and regulations that are based on conventional plan design standards, and the subdivision rules and regs provide special exceptions, if you will, or waivers when you do an open space community, the intention of which is to allow less disturbance to the natural environment, to create lower standards, or in the case of a roadway, a narrower roadway, so that you're able to maintain more of the natural environment and less paved surface. So the first request for waiver is that the standards allow a 26-foot roadway as opposed to a 30-foot roadway. And that is typical for the board. The board has actually in the past allowed even narrower roadways. I've seen 22-foot roadways in town. As a matter of fact, the Aspet Estates roadway is 22 feet. The second waiver request is to allow more than the maximum allowed lots on a cul-de-sac. The original proposal showed 2 cul-de-sacs, which was a greater disturbance to the site, more clearing and more roadway surface, more grading, more drainage for 2 roadways to adhere to the requirement of no more than 12 houses on 1 cul-de-sac. The applicant has requested that we allow 19 lots on the cul-de-sac. It doesn't increase the length of the road. All it does is it increases the number of lots on a dead-end street. It was decided during the concept plan that that was a better case for this particular site because it would require less roadway, less grading, and less clearing, and was a better treatment for the overall project site. So that would be a natural waiver to grant, allowing 19 lots on a cul-de-sac. The third waiver, which was brought to my attention by the applicant, was to allow the lotting plan, which requires to show all the lots on one plan, to be at a scale greater than 200, 1 to 200, but less than 100, because as you know, this plan contemplates lots also in the town of Grafton. And it's impossible to get all of the lots in Westborough and all of the lots in Grafton on one plan sheet. And our regulations require them all to be shown on one plan sheet. So that would require them to change the scale and provide a larger scale of 1 to 150 per inch on the plan. And that would be an acceptable waiver, I would think. I would recommend that you do that. So Kristen, can you progress forward? As I mentioned earlier, the board granted a concept plan and a special permit for an open space community. That was back in 2016. It was that long ago. And here we are today, 4 years later, with the final plan. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, you can stop at number 5. As you know, there are 2 open space parcels. The plans show parcels A and B in the entire subdivision. There's a typo in item A. It says Liberty Lane. It's actually Libby Lane, L-I-B-B-Y Lane. And parcels A and B are going to be transferred to the town under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission within 18 months of the issuance of this approval. And that was discussed with the applicant and found to be acceptable because there's significant grading behind some of these private lots to promote the drainage plan. The applicant feels that all the clearing and grading should be complete behind all of the house lots on the roadway Liberty Lane within 18 months. If for some reason that grading isn't complete and stabilized, the applicant could always come back to the board to extend that. But right now, it is intended that open space parcels A and B would be deeded to the town under the care and custody of the Westborough Conservation Commission within 18 months of the date of this approval, 18 months of today. And to echo that, the Conservation Commission last Tuesday evening, also in their decision, their order of conditions, required that parcels A and B be transferred to the town under the care and custody of the Westborough Conservation Commission within 18 months of their approval. So within a week, give or take 7 days, we expect that that will occur. Also, the developer will connect the existing trails on site. So currently, the subdivision plan shows multiple existing logging trails on this property that extend over the town line into Grafton. Some of those have been disconnected over the years and trees have grown up to block those trails. The applicant would clear the area where the vegetation has grown up and blaze those trails at the direction of the conservation agent. That would be done in the field and witnessed by the conservation agent, and that would be done before the property is transferred to the Conservation Commission. I can't tell if Patrick wants to speak. I see. Patrick, do you have your mic on?
I'm sorry, I do have my mic on. I was just checking off a couple of the typos that I caught, so you've already mentioned them.
Okay, thank you. If you'd proceed, Kristen, we'll move along. The Conservation Commission approval is noted there, number 6, as last Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. Number 7 says that there is a maximum of 19 buildable lots on the definitive plan. Traffic and roadway. Okay, let's stop here. I want to look at item 2. Item 2 talks about Harvest Way. As you know, currently Harvest Way is a cul-de-sac. It's a dead-end street. And there's a large cul-de-sac bulb at the end. It is currently open. There's no island in that cul-de-sac. It's a large cul-de-sac. When Harvest Way is complete, the cul-de-sac will no longer serve any purpose. The bulb itself will be retired, and the plan calls for the land within the current cul-de-sac bulb to be transferred to the ownership of the abutting property owners. That is typical. That is what this town does. It's what Westborough does when a new roadway is extended out the end of a cul-de-sac. The land would be transferred to the abutting property owners, and Harvest Way would then become one contiguous road up to where Libby Lane comes in. Then the name of the road would change, but the intention is to have one continuous street. So with the property being transferred, I received a comment earlier today that that land where the pavement is removed should be loamed and seeded before it is transferred to the property owners, the abutting property owners. So I would insert a note to that effect that where the pavement is removed, that property is to be loamed and seeded before transferred to the abutting property owners. Now, Patrick, that's new to you. Is that all right?
Seems perfectly reasonable.
Thank you. If you could pull the screen up a little bit, Kristen, item C has to deal with the binder course being installed prior to any lots being released, and also that the roadway curbing would be vertical granite type VB. That's how it's spec'd in our subdivision rules and regulations. This is typical, so this is not unusual. It's not the first time the applicant has seen this. He knows that's our standard vertical granite curb. Okay, if you could proceed. Okay, all of the erosion control is typical boilerplate. I don't think there's anything we need to discuss here. The next portion deals with the bond amounts to guarantee stabilization and site control during construction. This is the same items that we used in the last subdivision that we approved, Silver Hollow Estates. Okay, number 10, detention basins. You'll see that we added a paragraph here, a new paragraph C, and this was at the request of the town engineer. This states that the detention basin or temporary settling basins as shown in the project plans shall be constructed and be functional prior to the commencement of road construction. The town engineering department will inspect the detention and temporary settling basin to determine their adequacy and authorize construction activities. The reason that we do this is we want to keep all of the dirty water on the site. We don't want it leaving the site. We allow temporary settling basins to be constructed within the project roadway prior to binder course. And this is because we have a site that has slope here. As you know, Libby Lane goes up a hill. That dirty water will come down the street during grading activities that we discussed in one of the previous sections. We want to make sure that that dirty water stays and is contained on the site. That's what temporary settling basins are for. They're constructed in areas that's already disturbed so that we minimize the amount of erosion control. This item would clarify that requirement. I'm assuming Patrick already saw this and he's okay with that?
Through the chair, yes, we've seen that. Thank you.
Okay. Items 11 and 12 have to deal with water and sewer, and I had a typo that you can see was corrected. Streetlights is boilerplate, mailboxes. We discussed this because mailboxes have become an issue with us when we have gang mailboxes. Our subdivision regulations require safe shelter for the mailboxes and lighting. This is intended to allow someone to be able to pull up in their vehicle to the gang mailbox, get out, and in inclement weather, they would be able to be inside a shelter, access their mailbox with lighting inside the shelter, and then safely exit to their vehicle, or if they were coming down the sidewalk, to do the same thing. The mailbox closure will be identical to the one that currently exists on Appleseed Drive that serves the ridings now. So since this is an extension of the existing subdivision, the mailbox enclosures would be consistent. Let's move along. Number 15 is boilerplate. Construction activities, this is consistent to what we require in other subdivisions. So this is consistent with what we recently required in Silver Hollow Estates and probably all subdivisions in the last 10 years. So if we could just move along. Okay, hauling, that's probably something that you'll want to discuss. So as you know, we're going to be hauling some materials to the site, not much because we require that there be a balance between cuts and fills. Most of the material that will leave the Westborough portion of this development will be trafficked interior to the site over the subdivision roadway into Grafton. Grafton is in need of fill. They're in a fill condition. Westborough is in a cut condition. The top of the hillside where the homes will be built and New Libby Lane will provide fill materials to the Grafton side of the site. Should there be any need for stone, say for drainage structures, or for use within the roadway in Westborough, this section governs how that material would be brought to the site. And we intend to limit the materials in Westborough so that any hauling of materials for the roadway or drainage in Grafton would have to come across roads in Grafton, across Adam Street, into the entrance in Grafton on the Grafton Adam Street, not the Westborough Westborough Adam Street, but the Grafton Adam Street. And this section clarifies that. If you could move down a little bit, Westborough's procedure is to require the applicant to go to the police chief and fill out their form notifying them who the hauler is, what the hours of operation are for the hauling, what the trucks look like, and the routes that they will take. They fill out a form in the police department, so that if a neighbor calls and complains, the police have a file on it and they'd say, oh, is this Acme hauling? Do they have red and white trucks? What time of the day are they hauling? Just to make sure that they're in conformance with the requirements of this subdivision approval. So you'll note that in item C here, we're restricting the hours of hauling between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, no hauling on weekends or holidays. Also, further down, you'll note that all loads have to be covered, and that during hauling activities, the existing harvest way would need to be swept daily with a conventional sweeper that includes a water application feature. This is to keep the existing residential neighborhood on Harvest Way clean. This also talks about stockpiles. Normally, we would limit the stockpiles to be no closer than 100 feet from a property line. But the property lines here are the existing residential homes on Harvest Way. So we're requiring that to be 200 feet from any residential property line. Additionally, the stockpiles would have to be stabilized, and there would have to be a silt barrier, an erosion control barrier around each of the stockpiles. This is to prevent any erosion off-site or outside of the stockpile area. The barriers can be removed to allow vehicles or machinery to access them, but then they must be replaced at the end of each workday to keep the area stable and protected. Now, processing of materials, that can be screening of loam, it can be crushing of stone. We went through this with Silver Hollow Estates recently, and we would require that any stockpiles or any screening of materials where there's going to be any processing or crushing to be at least 500 feet from any abutting property line. This is, again, a further distance from any residential homeowners, and this is a large site, so they certainly have area where they can do that. Crushing or processing activities would have to occur between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. This is to give the neighbors a break on the weekend. As you know, Harvest Way currently is a cul-de-sac. The only people that drive on that cul-de-sac now are the residents or their guests, their visitors. And so they've enjoyed a quiet neighborhood. At least we can give them that quiet on weekends because they're going to have a completely different neighborhood Monday through Friday as the construction of the subdivision occurs. So the intention is to give them a quiet weekend. Any questions about hauling or processing?
Mr. Chairman, this is Patrick Healy from Thompson Liston. I'd like to request that 17G be 400 feet rather than 500, which would allow us to set up the crushing and handling operation in a relatively flat area of the site. It's approximately 400 to 450 feet from the last house at the end of Harvest Way.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, we'll discuss that change when we get through the decision. Hazel, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, am I mute? No. Jim, shall I raise my concerns now or later?
Well, the chair said he wanted to hold questions, but I'm fine. It's up to the chair.
Do you want to hold my questions
I'd
off?
like to get through it once because I think,
Fine.
and then I'll turn to each board member and you can go
Yep.
through your issues and we can, discuss the major ones and hopefully just close the book on something minor. So if you just I think we're getting close to the end, right, Jim?
Yeah, we're on page 14 of 20. 20 is the signature page, so we got like 5 pages left. Utilities is boilerplate. There's nothing new there. That's at the request of the DPW. Easements, all that language is boilerplate. That's at the request of the engineering department because, as you know, we may need easements to access anything surface or subsurface, particularly with regard to water, sewer, and drainage. Okay, lot releases and occupancy permits. As you know, we require binder course before we release any lots. We want to make sure that utilities are installed properly and that there's safe access for any emergency vehicles, police or fire. So we require a performance guarantee and that binder course be installed. The performance guarantee is found in our subdivision rules and regulations. It's the same method and options that we require for all subdivisions. The next section lists all of the comment letters that we have from our town departments or from outside sources. This is the overall hours of operation. So let's stop here at number 22. This is what we typically require. We are in the middle of a residential neighborhood, so the hours of operation are the same Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday. No work on federal holidays or Sundays unless the Westborough Police Department allows it. Sometimes we may have a subcontractor that needs to work, say, interior to a house that's been framed, could be an HVAC contractor, let's say, and he wants to work on Patriots Day, which is a state holiday. It's not a federal holiday. Other states don't recognize it. Some of these contractors want to be able to work on some of the minor holidays. I'm assuming that the police department wouldn't allow them to work on the major holidays, but they would have to request to work on Sunday, state, or federal holidays. Roadway naming, that's already been done, that's been decided, and the correct names are already on the plan. We now come to number 24. Could I come down to that? Okay, this shows the waivers that I discussed previously. This assumes that the board would grant them. If for some reason the board doesn't grant them, I'm gonna have to remove that section. Let's go on to the next page. That shows the new waiver, which I discussed earlier, which is showing the plan in a new scale of 1 to 150 as opposed to 1 to 100 or 1 to 200. Additional public approvals. This just states that if the applicant needs to get any approvals from the Board of Health or from the Conservation Commission in the future, or from DEP, or from Mass Highway, which he won't need, but any other public agency that is required to permit this project, that those permits would become part of the record and that they would be necessary prior to executing this definitive approval. Modifications, this just simply is boilerplate. It states that the applicant, if they need to change this plan, they come to the planning board, and the planning board by majority vote decides whether or not that requested change is significant and requires a public hearing, or conversely is not material or not significant, and therefore only a simple vote at a regular meeting of the planning board would be required. Non-performance, this states that if at any time the applicant does not conform to the approval, that the planning board can have them in and advertise a public hearing to consider whether or not the project can move forward, or conversely, that the approval needs to be rescinded until such time as the applicant comes into conformance with the approval. Assignment, this is an important aspect that we built into our subdivision regs about a decade ago, and it states that if the applicant assigns this approval to another developer, we've had projects sold before they were built. You can think of a couple recently. This states that the applicant must come back to the developer before he assigns that to the new developer. And I've quoted the section that you see, Roman numeral 5, section O, sale of lots or parcels prior to construction. And I believe that's it. Yes, that's the end of the approval.
So why don't we go to Hazel first? Well, first of all, Patrick, Hazel, give me just one more minute. Patrick, you've been through the draft waiver. Do you have any comments that you on behalf of the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just noticed one other typo on page 2. Under description of the plan, the date on the last line there.
Yep. I fixed that, Patrick. I caught it and fixed it.
You caught it. All right. I think I'm all set then. Thank you.
So I don't want to get too into typographical errors. There's a few in here, so if I think we can all agree that we just point those out to Jim, he'll fix those in the final version of this. And unless anyone has a strenuous objection to that, and then we can go through each of those right now. But I'm more concerned with substantive issues. And Hazel, I'd like you to start. You had your hand up first.
Okay. I guess to preface this, my concern is based on where this particular subdivision is located and the fact that it's the access to the subdivision is through fairly narrow roads through a totally residential area. The haulage itself, they can only do Monday through Friday. That's specific 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever it is for the haulage. However, this seems to be somewhat in conflict with the fact that they can work on Saturdays. And there's nothing that would prevent large trucks or deliveries on Saturdays through that residential area. And that's a time when you'd have a lot of families are out with kids riding their bikes or things like that. And I feel because of the way of where this particular subdivision is located, that having large deliveries of, they could deliver equipment, for example, could be delivered the way it's written at the moment on a Saturday. Or when they get into larger construction materials, for example, could be delivered on a Saturday. So I would like to be able to see something if we can work with the developer and clean up this language a little bit so that I have no objection to them working on site in constructing the houses, but I'm more concerned about the delivery of materials through the neighborhood on a weekend.
Okay. So any response to that? Jim, do you have any ideas on that?
If I understand member Nurse's concern, it's the delivery of, say, a track vehicle or some construction equipment on a large flatbed truck to the project site through the residential neighborhood. I understand. I didn't anticipate that, but that's a very good point. That certainly could happen. So for example, if a screener shows up to screen some of the material on Monday morning, but it's delivered on a Saturday, and offloaded in the cul-de-sac and then driven onto the site, because that's probably what they would do, I can see that could be a disturbance. It's not the same as a contractor framing a house interior to the site. Once they start building houses, nobody's going to see anything because they're so far in the woods. Once they're on the site, obviously workers' vehicles are going to come down the cul-de-sac every day to go to work, but once they're on the site, they're not going to see hear anything once the grading work is done, once the clearing is over. So I understand that. Patrick, have you dealt with this anywhere else? Have you got some ideas? What have been the reactions of contractors to limiting equipment coming to the site on a weekend?
I think it would be pretty common for large pieces of equipment to be moved on a Saturday when there's not a lot of activity on the site per se. For example, a screener or a large excavator, or a delivery of some other piece of equipment that wouldn't be used on a Monday through Friday basis. They would typically move those on Saturdays.
So I think that the point though, Patrick, is that we're asking them not to do that on Saturdays.
Well, perhaps one of the things, I don't know, they might, if they came up the other way, for example, instead of coming up through Harvest Way, if they came up through Adams Street in Grafton and were delivered that way, I don't know, maybe that would be better. It's just I'm concerned because those are really quite narrow roads when you're coming in from the Westborough side, because you're coming in, I think it's Nash to Harvest, and those are narrow roads through there.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Hazel, I talked to the planner in Grafton, and they're opposed to anything that's coming to Westborough going through their town, the same as we
All
are.
right, okay.
I understand your concern. I think it would be better than have anything go through Grafton, would be to decide to limit what can come on the weekends, or allow it, but don't involve Grafton.
Okay.
All right, so Jim, if we
Mr.
want to
Chairman.
look at that, how can you start thinking about where that would go into? I think it'd probably be under number 16, construction.
Yeah, Kristen, can you go there? Can you go down to hauling and go down to that section?
Well, I wasn't looking at hauling of fill. That's a separate section. I was looking at construction.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm not sure what number that is.
That's number 16, and you have a section in there already. There'll be no parking of construction vehicles on Harvest Day.
That's appropriate.
And then there's all parking and storage of construction vehicles. Could we add a bullet, maybe G, something about no heavy machinery, or again, I'm not sure what size truck we would limit.
What I could do is discuss this with Lisa, what she would consider to be large construction equipment. I mean, we could make a list of the usual suspects, front end loader and the like, and just say related construction equipment similar to, and then have a list and say, and the like, and limit that to Monday through Friday with no deliveries of these forms of equipment on weekends or state and federal holidays.
Or materials.
Yeah, we already have that on the materials.
Because you don't want a large flatbed truck with, huge amounts of lumber coming through there.
Okay, if the board will indulge me to discuss this with the town engineer, what to limit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it's Patrick Healy on behalf of the developer. I think that would unfairly tie the hands of the developer not being able to have equipment or supplies come on a Saturday, when quite frequently those pieces of equipment are moved on the weekend when they're not working from 7 to 3 or 8 to 5. You might consider limiting the hours on a Saturday in which it's allowed, but still allowing some flexibility on the developer's part.
That sounds reasonable. If I could, maybe limit it 9 to noon so that people don't get awakened at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. by a vehicle being brought to the site. It doesn't have to be 9, it could be 8, whatever, but that sounds reasonable. We've done that elsewhere with hours of construction on site.
I think that's a reasonable compromise, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and are we going to ask them to check in with the chief of police as well on those vehicles?
Yeah, certainly.
All right, so we'll have to come up with some proposed language. I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. I'd like to hear from the rest of the board on this issue. Somebody care to start?
Mark, Jim Ball. I agree with Hazel's comments. I do, having a lot of excavators and people as clients, they do move their equipment in the morning on Saturdays when it's not being operated because they want it to be used during the week. So I think some compromise, like Patrick mentioned, there aren't sidewalks on those roads, so I would prefer in the afternoons on Saturdays that not happen. But I think his compromise, is reasonable. To allow them, typical work, and at the same time, citizens to know, like in the afternoon, they wouldn't have to be dealing with it. Everything else, I've read this several times. Everything else seems fine to me, frankly. I didn't have any other comments other than that.
Is it possible to ask them to maintain a lower speed limit than would be normal on those roads? Maybe, I mean, I don't know if that's just an outlandish suggestion, but, say limiting them to 20 miles an hour or less.
I think you may have a problem with the Board of Selectmen on that.
Right. Again, that might be a little bit outside our jurisdiction. All right.
30 miles an hour is the typical local street limit. I don't think they'll move quicker than that. Certainly large equipment won't be moving anywhere near that.
All right. How about the rest of the board? Tim Paris or Tim Taylor, do you have any questions?
I would echo what Jim Ball said. I think allowing them to move stuff on Saturday mornings seems reasonable. As long as they know they're limited to the mornings, it shouldn't be a problem.
Tim Kaler, anything?
I don't have any questions, Mark. That seems like a reasonable compromise for moving the equipment. So,
yeah, I actually tend to agree with Hazel on this. I mean, it's 9 to 4 during the week is a pretty large window to move equipment, and I'm not sure why we should ask residents in that area to endure heavy equipment on those streets. I agree that there are some really tight streets. Adams comes to mind as an extremely skinny street that I wouldn't want to encounter a flatbed towing a trailer with heavy equipment on it. If I were out jogging on a Saturday morning, which I think on a week, again, we're in crazy times, so people are probably jogging 7 days a week. But during normal times, they're off to work Monday through Friday.
Mark, I would counter there that this equipment is very expensive and they use it from 9 to 4 during the week. That's why they move it on the weekends. In fairness to the owners and operators of this equipment, it operates from 9 to 4. So I think you have to be thoughtful about that. I think the other issue, having grown up on Adams Street, my parents are still there, I'm on it all the time. They cannot drive fast on Adams Street. So the reality is it's not unlike Mount Pleasant. People go slower and they're careful. And I think to your earlier comment too, people are out and about at all times now. It's very different. Everybody's home every day. So I just think you have to consider that this equipment is expensive and it's used from 9 to 4. That's why they don't move it then.
All right. I'm willing to go along with a compromise on that, as far as Saturday mornings, maybe 9 to 12. Then. All right. Hazel, let's go back to you because I wasn't sure if you had any other issues with any other sections of the.
No, that was my main issue with it. And, I think the compromise is all right. I'm not happy about it. I think the problem, my main concern about our roads in situations like that is we don't have sidewalks. And consequently, anybody walking or out with your kids on a Saturday morning with a kid riding a bicycle, that's my concern. It's a safety thing. So, maybe I think Mark's thought about in some way if they were planning to move equipment, whether the police would be notified so that if we begin to have any problems, we can revisit this.
Okay. All right. So no other issues with the draft decision, Hazel left?
No.
Okay. I'll move on to Jim Ball. Do you have any other issues with any items you want to discuss on the decision?
No, Mark, everything else looks well done and in order. I already commented on the minor errors and things to Jim.
Tim Paris, anything?
No, I've got nothing. It all looks good.
Tim Kaler?
no, Mark, I'm fine. Looks good.
all right. I had some comments. Let me go through my list. I'm not going to deal with the typographical stuff. All right, so Jim Robbins, under the first section, description of the plan, we have the applicant has requested 2 waivers from the planning board as follows. I'm assuming you're going to add the 3rd waiver to this section as well.
Yes.
Okay. You already dealt with the loam and seating on the disturbed areas of the cul-de-sac bulb. Under traffic roadway, the number C, the new subdivision roadway is to be constructed to include the binder coat pavement before any house lot shall be released for construction. Top course paving shall be installed to meet town specifications. I'd like there to be a time limit on how long after, I don't want this to go 10 years before we get a top coat. So I don't know if the applicant has a reasonable time frame as to when they expect that top course to be installed. I would suggest maybe a time frame of, say, I think a generous time frame of 3 years after the first occupancy permit. But I'd like to hear from the applicant as to whether there's a time frame that they would be in agreement with.
Mr. Chairman, the 3-year window seems reasonable. If the market drops out or something, we can come back and talk to the board about it.
Okay. So Jim, can you make a note to add some type of time frame to that section? Jim Robbins?
Yes. So your time frame, I would suggest, and I want Patrick's comment on this, I would suggest that time frame be 36 months from first occupancy.
Yeah, I think that's what I said. So that'll work. The next issue I had under item, let's see, we're further down under erosion and sediment control on page 9, item G. There's a $5,000 cash security for emergency purposes for use by the town engineer, town planner, or building commissioner. I'd like to add the DPW director to that. It's not, I assume everybody will be available, but I think that the DPW director might be the first one contacted if there's an emergency, related to erosion control.
That's fine.
The next one I had was on page 11 under mailboxes. The sentence reading, group mailbox emplacements shall include proper weather enclosure and lighting to ensure public safety. I think proper can be interpreted in different ways by different people. So in the next sentence, under specifications for the group mailbox emplacements, weather enclosure and lighting shall be shown on the definitive plans and approved by the town planner. I'd just like to add the words and approved by the town planner to the end of that. Patrick, speak up if you have any objection to these changes.
Mr. Chairman, I was having trouble hearing you. Could you repeat that, please?
Under the mailboxes, I just want to add at the, that's page, what did I say, page 12,
Yes, I understand you're on page 11, number 14. I had
wanna say
trouble
that
understanding your phrase.
in the last paragraph, I mean, the last sentence where the specifications will be shown on the plan, I want to add the words "and shall be approved by the town planner."
That's fine, sir.
Okay.
I'm sure Patrick will be okay with that because the closure will look like Fenway Park.
Isn't the opener tomorrow? No, we're getting sidetracked. The next one I had under 17, hauling of fill materials on page 13 of 20. Item C, hauling on Westborough Road shall only occur between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. I'd like to move that back to 9 a.m. and based on our prior discussion, I'm expecting some discussion of that. So let me know if there's objections to that.
So that's
Mr. Chairman, under 17A, you require that the applicant developer consult with the school department to avoid any conflicts with school buses. I think that would cover us.
Well, we've limited processing of materials from 9 to 4, even though they're going to be 400 feet or more from a residential home. I would suggest that trucks hauling dirt and fill are every bit as loud as processing when they're going down someone's street. And I think starting at a later hour would be appropriate.
Would the hauling that's contemplated include the concrete delivery trucks? Because they typically mobilize prior to 7 a.m. So they would be driving, they would leave their yard, say at 6:30 a.m., arrive on site before 8, depending on where the concrete is coming from.
Well, I'll let Jim answer that question. Would that apply to the concrete trucks?
So I personally think the concrete trucks are construction equipment. I don't think that's hauling of materials, but someone might argue because what they're hauling is a material. It's concrete inside the mixer. But so I agree with what Patrick said. Knowing the hours of site contractors and knowing those that are going to pour foundations, they want to be there as soon as they can. They want to be there when the site is allowed to open. So, I mean, and particularly in the inclement weather months, they tend to get there earlier. And that was always an issue for us. We wanted to make sure that they didn't start idling their vehicles, at 6 o'clock to be ready to go at 7 o'clock, because diesel engines require a while to warm up. That's why we covered it the way that we did. I don't know. I don't think a cement mixer is hauling a material, but that's the way I interpret it.
Well, then it would be a heavy equipment, and you're going to propose some language for those types of vehicles.
Yeah, if I understand what the board's wishes are on that, you wanted to limit the hours of equipment delivery on Saturdays to between the hours of 8 a.m. and noon.
So I think it was 9 a.m. today.
Oh, 9 a.m.? Okay.
But now we, again, so I don't think that delivery of heavy equipment only has to be on Saturdays. It could be Monday between 9 and 4, or the Monday through Friday between 9 and 4. I just think, we're talking about different types of vehicles, but basically, I'm trying to inconvenience those residents as little as possible. So I'm open to some compromises on this, or suggestions from the board, or the commentary that I'd like to hear from the rest of the board on it. Anybody wants to start? Yeah.
Mark, I agree with you as far as Saturdays go. I prefer it between 9 and noon. Only so that people are going to sleep in, that makes sense. So I would agree with you on that. I would prefer to see those hours on Saturday between 9 and noon.
What about the hauling of film materials, Hazel? You think that should be allowed at 7 a.m.?
I think most construction projects around here seem to do that. And I think in this particular, if my memory serves me right, isn't the fill mostly internal?
Almost all on site.
Yeah, they're not going to be moving much fill that's going to be coming from outside. So I think in this project, it's probably all right. And during the normal time of year, people are up at that time, either for school or going to work. So as I said, I think with this project, because of the internal use of that and 7, it doesn't go on forever. So I'd live with that.
Yeah, my thoughts are you shorten those hours, you lengthen the time the job takes. So it's a compromise. I would agree with Hazel. I mean, I'm up at 6 in the morning on the weekdays. I think most people are. So I don't think during the week, I get concerned about, trying to, it's okay for concrete trucks, but it's not okay for another truck. I think that can get messy.
All right. Any other comments then, Tim? Or Tim? No? All right. So we'll leave that at 7 to 4 then, as long, I think as long as we're consulting the school department on the bus schedules in that area, then I'm comfortable with that. I prefer it started later, but I agree with Jim's point about extending the duration of the project. I don't want that to happen either.
Mark, I do think the bus conflicts will push it a bit later as a result anyway. So that will probably happen.
All right. All right. Those are the major comments that I had. Again, I had a couple other typos that I'll just address with Jim by email. So do we have any other comments, discussion, anything from you, Jim Robbins?
I have nothing additional.
All right, Patrick, anything
Mr. Chair,
else?
this is Chris Pant.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering if I could make a quick comment. I apologize for not getting this into the feedback earlier. I mentioned it to Jim briefly earlier today or late afternoon, but the pump station that these new lots will feed in is overhauled, and I know it was, or I believe it was designed to accommodate this eventual development, but it's been a couple of decades now. And so I think there might be some, I think it might benefit the town if there's some language added to this that would require the developer to address issues that might arise at the pump station as a result of the addition of 19 new lots. And I can't give you specifically what that would be, but I can anticipate that after a couple of decades of use and now we're adding these lots, potentially that could create an issue for us that the town's going to have to address one way or the other.
Mr. Chairman, just to kind of add to that, Chris and I did discuss this afternoon. Patrick is here. I would like to propose that the developer would be responsible for improving the Harvest Way sewer pump station if the additional flow brought to the station by the Ridings 2 requires an upgrade as determined by the town engineer.
So that's pretty vague, Jim. I'd like to hear from the applicant on that. I think, from what I've seen of these, most developers would prefer certainty as far as an amount. you know, again, I'm not, you know, it seems kind of open-ended as to what, um,
It's open-ended deliberately, and that is because when the Harvest Way Station was built, it was intended to handle future development at the end of the cul-de-sac, not knowing what additional flow might be coming to that pump station in the interim, meaning when the station came online about 1994, I'm going to guess, sounds about right. I was here in 93, it wasn't online yet, but it was online shortly after that. I think that probably the Water and Sewer Division of the Department of Public Works will want to look at that and discuss it with the developer. If the developer's engineer feels that it's appropriate to discuss this with the engineering at the time, that would give them both the opportunity to come to a compromise if needed. It may not even need to be updated. I don't know.
so it sounds to me like we're gonna have to continue this to the next meeting anyway, because of some of the other edits. So I guess in fairness to the applicant, and if they want to continue this discussion on the sewer improvements, now we can do that, or if they want to have some time with you and Chris to work out language and you know, the structure of that, I think that might be best done outside of this meeting. And I'd like to hear your thoughts. Patrick, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the pump station was designed to take a significantly larger flow than it currently is handling. And we do have a letter of agreement with Mr. Walden, previous Public Works Director, acknowledging that fact. So I think, you know, if there are any questions about the operation of the system, the pump would operate more frequently, which would seem to improve things. There's certainly enough capacity in the wet well and the station design to handle the flow from our point of view.
All right, so it doesn't seem like we have an agreement on this. Do we have any other comments from either Chris or Jim or anyone else on the board on this issue?
Mark, I guess I'm just confused. If it was designed to handle this extra flow, I guess that's what the confusion is. Is Chris, are you saying that a pump may be worn out, or maybe time to? I'm trying to understand how this would work.
Yeah, so my understanding is exactly what the applicant said, which is it was designed anticipating additional flow. I can't tell you what that amount specifically was, but it was designed 20 some years ago. And so I think from the town's perspective, if you're gonna add, you know, a new subdivision, essentially 19 lots, that we should have the ability, should it be identified, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, as we're moving forward with this project, we have some flexibility to go back and, you know, discuss how we solve a potential problem if one's identified. May not be a problem, and I don't know of one right now, but I'm just saying that, I mean, we're relying on a pump station that was built 26 years ago. And so, and we're talking about a project that's going to be extending over the next several years, I imagine. So it's just something that I think, I'm just throwing it out there. I think it's worth considering, certainly open to discussing, or, you know, coming up with some language that is, you know, not detrimental to the applicant, but protects the town.
Okay. All right. I'd like to see that pursued. I don't know how everyone else on the board feels.
Yeah, Mark, this is Tim. I have a question as a new person, that if the applicant has a letter from the DPW head that this was analyzed, these lots, and that the sewer pump station is adequate to handle it, it sounds to me like we're reopening this. And if the engineers haven't reviewed this size subdivision and the capacity of the sewer pump, why not? when we get to this point? Is that not a matter of initial analysis? So
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know the date of that letter, but that was the previous DPW head who wrote that letter. This subdivision has been in process since, I think the original proposal came to us in 2016. So we're talking about 4 years of.
well, I guess that's my point. It's been 4 years. If the number of lots hasn't changed and the technology in the pump station hasn't changed, then why are we bringing this up at this point?
Okay, point taken.
Mr. Chairman, this is Patrick Healy again. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the town will receive significant revenues from the sewer connection fees from the 19 proposed homes on the order of $10,000 per lot. So that would seem to leave some funding available to the community if there are in fact capacity issues that need to be addressed.
All right. So why don't we, unless somebody else has a comment on this, again, I'm not sure we're going to close the decision tonight. I still feel like there's some open issues on it. Anyone else care to comment on that?
My only question was the letter from John Walden, which seemed to say that this was fine. Was that based on the additional 19 units using this, or was it more of a general kind of thing? Patrick, do you know on that?
Through the chair, yes, that was based on the 19 proposed lots.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I would ask that letter be included in the comments in the decision and the comments from the town boards. I'm not really clear where that letter is, and I'm not sure that that letter's ever been presented to the planning board.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, excuse me for interrupting. You cannot include it in comment letters considered during the public hearings because it was not introduced as material at that time. However, in the section under water and sewer and utilities, we could reference the previous agreement or the previous determination by the town. It's just the letter itself cannot be referenced as a document attached to the decision. You could, however, say in a letter, it was determined by the Department of Public Works director on such and such a day that the capacity of the existing sewer pump station on Harvest Way could handle an additional 19 lots. We could say that, but I'm not sure that that's satisfactory to what the question is. If you delay this decision tonight, the applicant has to give you a request for an extension for that delay. Otherwise, I have till close of business on Thursday to file this decision.
I personally don't feel like there's any really meaningful outstanding items that we haven't corrected.
Well,
I think we're in agreement on the Saturday hours. I think we're all in agreement on that addition. I think I can't think of anything else that there was disagreement on. Well, and there wasn't disagreement there.
I still feel like we have some issues with the hours of construction equipment, but you feel like we're okay with the compromise on. I guess I was looking to see the actual language on that, but you're comfortable with trusting. I mean, Jim has done this a while, so I think he'll come up with language that'll work for that.
I'm comfortable with that.
Are you talking about the hours of operation, Mark, or are you talking about the sewer pump station?
I was talking about the hours of operation, not the hours of operation necessarily, but the hours of
hauling.
I mean, we really don't address heavy equipment in this decision at all. We address hauling of fill, and we address parking of construction vehicles, but we don't really address non-hauling hauling heavy equipment. So front loaders, or and I thought you had said you were going to put together a list from the town engineer and give us some language on that to include in the decision.
Okay, through the chairman, my understanding was that we were going to limit the hours of equipment delivery to the site. That's why we were talking about a cement mixer. And the delivery of equipment on, say, a flatbed is different than equipment associated with a contractor or their workers. So we can make a distinction between contractor vehicles and construction worker vehicles. But once you start dealing with equipment, I think it was Member Ball mentioned, it's a slippery slope, because if you leave something out, or someone thinks a cement mixer is a piece of construction equipment, you're kind of on a slippery slope. I think that what we should do is mention the hours of equipment that we do accept. That would be contractors' vehicles, workers' vehicles, and customary associated vehicles under their own power, other than track vehicles, things like that, front-end loaders. I think it's better to list the equipment you do accept than try to exclude things that you can't anticipate.
Jim, I'm fine with that. I just, again, I'm not really clear how we're incorporating this into the decision. So if we want to hash that out, or at least give me a clearer understanding of what section you're going to put that in, and how that's going to be worded, I can move past it.
But are we agreed then on Saturdays it would be 9 to 12?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm okay with that compromise. I think that, again, I don't think we need to limit them to only Saturdays. I think it could be Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, and Saturdays 9 to 12. But we really haven't defined, again, what.
How about, if I could, again, through the chairman, how about the delivery of construction equipment other than contractors' vehicles and workers' vehicles shall be limited on Saturday between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. That basically says that if you're a worker or a contractor, you can drive onto the site and work all day on Saturday. But if you're delivering a construction equipment, it has to be between 9 and 12. I guarantee you the contractors know the difference between their own vehicles and construction equipment.
Okay, I would just modify equipment and add materials.
Okay, I will add materials.
And what section are you putting that in?
I'm sorry?
And what section are you putting that in?
That's in under construction.
Right. So we'll add a bullet G to that.
Be adding a new line item.
Right. All right. Patrick, did you hear that suggested language? Are you okay with it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, would you repeat that, please?
Did you hear that language that Jim Robbins just suggested to add regarding construction related equipment?
Yes, sir, that seems reasonable. That the delivery of heavy equipment and materials other than contractor vehicles or employees' vehicles will be limited on Saturdays to the hours of 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Right. All right. So I feel like we've now dealt with almost every outstanding issue. Does anybody have any further questions on it? All right. Anybody care to make a motion?
Kristen, do you have that motion?
Yeah.
Can you share it in a group chat, Kristen?
We had a draft motion.
Yeah, I move that the Westborough Planning Board approve the definitive residential subdivision plan for the Ridings 2 as written in the subdivision approval dated 7/21/2020 and as modified here this evening.
Second that, Mark.
Jim, are you comfortable with the language of that motion?
Please say again, Mark. I didn't hear that.
Are you comfortable with the language of that motion?
Yes, I wrote it.
Right. Any discussion of that motion?
No.
Okay. I will do a roll call again. All those in favor? Jim Ball,
Yes, Mark.
Hazel,
Yes, to approve.
Tim Paris,
Yes.
Tim Taylor,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. That's 5-0. Thank you.
Point of clarification, Tim Kaler, the state subdivision control law and the open meeting law states that a member who has missed more than one of the public hearings cannot vote. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate your vote. I do. It just means that your vote will not be necessary for this. We only need 3 positives. We have 4. Next time when we open a public hearing, like with the next project, it's going to be heard, Rugged Trails, you're sitting on the board. All of the public hearings for the Ridings 2 were held prior to the election.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Patrick. All right. I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is an informal discussion of the Rugged Trails preliminary plan submittal. Do we have someone here for the applicant?
I do. My name is Karen Keegan. I'm from Guaranteed Builders. Along with me is Paul Hutnack. He's the design engineer of the project. This is a 3-lot subdivision off of Ruggles Street near the Westborough Upton town line. It's a 5-lot piece of property. It's a 5-acre lot with 150 feet of frontage. There's a wetland in the back that has been flagged about a year ago. We were in front of the planning board probably about this time last year, maybe, with a open space subdivision plan. We have decided to come in front of you with a conventional subdivision instead. The homeowner did not want to go with the open space. Again, we are proposing 3 lots. Each lot has at least 50,000 square feet, if not more, and 200 feet of frontage. The houses that are shown on the plan, Kristen, can we go to the plan that has the lots on it? There you go. Each lot has a house with that's approximately 30 by 60, and they are all at least 50 feet off the right-of-way. Again, this is a 50-foot right-of-way. We are asking for 20 feet of pavement rather than the 26. We are asking for a waiver for that. We are also asking for a waiver for sidewalk since it's such a small roadway. It is only 419.71 feet long. We are asking for a waiver for granite curbing. All work for this proposed site is out of the 100-foot buffer, but we do have a Zone A surface water supply area on the property, and all the drainage, which is on lot 3, is also out of that area. There's a gravel access to that easement, a 10-foot wide easement, gravel access to that drainage area, which again is on lot 3. 2 of the lots have a proposed septic systems on them, and one of them will be serviced by town sewer, where there's a moratorium. Lots 1 through 3 do not have frontage on Ruggles Street. All lots will be serviced by town water. Soil testing was also done a year ago. I was out there with the Board of Health agent and Robert Duff, the town engineer. We did soil testing both for the roadway and for the septic system areas. The proposed roadway has a 3.8% slope. That is after the first 100 feet that has a slope of 1.8%. There are 2 catch basins in the cul-de-sac to handle the drainage in the street, along with 2 other catch basins before you get to the cul-de-sac. There are 4 street lights proposed and 1 fire hydrant proposed at the end of the cul-de-sac near lot 1. Does the commission have any, the board have any questions? I know you've seen this before. Again, it came to you in front of you as an open space subdivision.
Mark, I have a question at your convenience.
Jim, go ahead.
Hi, Karen. I see on the plan it shows proposed sidewalk. So you've put that on there in case we don't give you a waiver. Is that correct?
Paul, can you answer that question?
Hi, yes, Paul Utnick here with Guaranteed Builders as well. Yes, at this point, this is a preliminary discussion, I guess. So it is shown on there to show what it would be, but we would like to request a waiver from it, just given the small nature of the roadway, the short nature.
Thank you, Paul.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead.
Don't forget, you need to come to the Historical Commission on your street name.
Yes.
You can't just,
Also with the House Hazel, I have to come in front of the Historical Commission too.
Okay. I had seen a name on the street and it concerned me.
Yes, the street they want to call is Serrata Lane. That was the street that they wanted for the open space subdivision also. It means, I'm not too sure of what it means, but Sundar knows what it means.
Okay, well, we're looking for something that has historical significance, not just names sort of that people pick themselves. We really like to work on that. So anyway, we'll wait to see you come before the Historical Commission. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from the board? All right. I have some questions, Karen. I'm a little confused. And again, I'm not an engineer, so I don't read these quite as well as somebody might. But how is it that lots 1 and 3 do not have frontage on Ruggles? Is the right of way?
They do not have frontage on Ruggles Street, only the proposed right of way.
Okay, so if the right of way is wider?
Yes. Has a 75 foot radius, or 76 foot radius on that roadway.
And the right of way takes up that entire 76 feet?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens if the waiver to grant the road width is not given? I'm just a little confused how that's going to affect that. Will you have enough room to put the road in?
Yes.
Okay. And you'll still have enough room to put those 2 septic systems in.
If the pavement is not reduced to 26 feet, because the roadway is still a 50-foot wide roadway.
Right. So the waiver is only to reduce the pavement.
So for the pavement, yes.
All right. I'm not really sure that I'm comfortable with waiving the curbing and sidewalks. I'd like to hear from department heads on that. But it sounds like you've got a buildable subdivision regardless. But if we don't waive that, we'll just have to spend more money to do that. So I don't know if any of the department heads want to comment on that now, or we'll save that for later.
Mark, you're a little bit hard to hear.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Basically, I'm not that comfortable with waiving the curbing and sidewalk requirement. And I'd like to hear from the department heads on that either tonight or in a future meeting. If no one wants to comment on that tonight, then we can save that for when the application actually comes in.
Mark,
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to look at that, so we would like the opportunity before you make a decision.
Well, we're not making a decision on it tonight.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
Just a preliminary discussion. So we'll certainly give you a chance to comment. And if you haven't seen it yet, I wouldn't expect you to comment tonight. So I'm just giving them my opinion of it. So, all right. What other issues do we need to discuss on this? Jim Robbins, is there anything else?
They have requested waivers, which you've discussed. Obviously, this will go out to all town departments. This is a pre-submittal discussion. So tomorrow, this will officially be received, and we will send this out under cover of a memo from our office for town department review. In 1 month, Karen will be back in front of the planning board to begin the official discussion from the board to move forward in getting preliminary approval. She then would proceed to the definitive phase, which, as you know, requires a public hearing. The preliminary plan does not require a public hearing. It's basically a conceptual, I hate to use that word because we define a concept plan, but it basically is a conceptual plan for subdivision to proceed to refine drawings. The conventional plan is a different process from the open space community. As you know, the open space community requires public hearing up front and a special permit from the planning board. The project then proceeds to a refined preliminary plan and then to a definitive plan. Under a conventional plan, which is allowed for any project site that's less than 10 acres, and this is 5+ acres, the conventional plan has a different process. It proceeds directly to the preliminary plan and without a public hearing, and then to the definitive plan with a public hearing. So you have a lesser level of review for this plan. That doesn't mean staff doesn't review it. They review it the same way. It just means it's a shortened time period for the approval process. So next, this goes out to staff. We will have a general review meeting with staff. Karen will be invited and Guaranteed Builders will be invited. That's similar to what we did before, Karen, only now you have a refined plan for us to look at.
That sounds great.
All right. So thank you for coming in. I don't think there's really much else to talk about tonight until we get further in this process. So I'd like to move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is an update on the Village Commons lot releases. Jim Robbins, I'd like you to start with just an update for the board, and then we'll let the applicant address the board.
Sure, thank you. Since our last meeting, the developer was able to meet with the design review board. The design review board made multiple requests. The developer has worked with his architect to provide plan updates, additional information, material specifications for the design review board to review. The design review board is meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 with the applicant. After that time, if things are approved, the applicant will come back to the planning board to request his lot releases for future lots. As you know, one of those items is the design for the commercial building, and that is going to be discussed tomorrow, as well as changes to the 3 optional residential building designs, options type A, B, and C. Those designs have been submitted to the Design Review Board. They are looking at them for completeness, and we'll discuss tomorrow with the applicant those designs. I expect he'll be back in front of the Planning Board at our next meeting for his lot releases. Stay tuned.
Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I had come with the hopes of getting the lots released tonight, and I'm basically stuck not having any work there. I mean, I finished up whatever permits I got, and I've done everything there that I was asked of, and I think we will get our little things resolved with the DRB. I've submitted everything, and I just don't want to be held up on proceeding with the remainder of the houses. I've placed the bond, I've done everything, placed the road, the infrastructure, that I just cannot build. So I think it's a little bit, I think it would be fair on part of the planning board to release my lots. I mean, that has nothing to do with the DRB. So, and I still have to deal with the DRB, which I'm fine with. And I think tomorrow's submittals that I've made, I'm pretty confident that it's going to be okay. So I request that the planning board consider releasing the lots tonight. Last time, we did not have the paperwork in front of you, as if you remember. And now I think I make sure that they brought the paperwork. That's just my request to do it. I know, that's all I can say. I mean, the houses are all sold. I want to finish and get out of there this year. On another note, Mr. Chairman, you know, everybody talked about the affordable house. I already got the affordable house up, and the DHCDs are dragging their feet. They're not ready to sell it for another 2-3 months. So I got that up, and I'm just going to be eating interest on it. So it's already up. You know, we all thought. So I'd appreciate if you could just release the lots, or at least give me a few lots so I can keep going. You know, so.
Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, Hazel, go ahead.
Okay.
At this time, I'm certainly opposed to releasing any lots. There are a number of things that have not been resolved by the Design Review Board. I think we'll discuss this tomorrow morning. We are still missing documentation, which we will need to make final decisions on this. So I think we're still somewhat up in the air about how to proceed until we get all the material we need. So I would certainly not be in favor of having the planning board grant any releases at this time.
Okay. Jim Ball, did you have some comments?
Hazel just answered my questions.
Tim Paris, do you have anything?
No, I was waiting to hear what Hazel had to say about how things are proceeding.
Okay. Tim Kaler, I know this is relatively new issue for you, so do you have anything that you want clarified? Or
No questions or comments at this time, Mark.
okay. So I guess my biggest question is how we're going to, I completely agree with Hazel. I'm opposed to releasing lots. But my biggest question is how we're going to move this project forward in a productive manner. And I think there was a suggestion made by another member of the board that the original special permit on this gives us the authority to request that you hire a project manager or other consultant. And I'd like to suggest that you hire professional help to get you through this process, because clearly there's a disconnect between the expectations of the town, the expectations of the bylaws, and the expectations of the Design Review Board, and your expectations as a developer. And I'd like to move this project forward, but I just feel like we're not any further along than we were 3 meetings ago, and I'm a little frustrated with it. So Farouk, if you have any comments, I'll let you address the board on that.
Yes. I have submitted everything to the board that I was supposed to be about 2 weeks ago. And I'm finding out tonight, that there's something missing. 2 weeks they've had it. Now, as far as the stuff you're talking about, any change we made, we came in front of the DRB. Either they approved it or they're still looking at it. I didn't do anything there that was belligerent or just changed without asking. It came in front of the DRB. Now, it took us a little bit of time for us to get all the information together. And unfortunately, DRB were not able to meet because of vacations or whatever past a month or so. It was not me that delayed it. They just couldn't, get the date together. I know we're meeting tomorrow morning, and I expect that everything should be okay, in tomorrow's meeting. I've submitted everything that I could possibly do. There's nothing missing. But I did find out there was one little detail missing tonight, and I'm going to have that in by tomorrow morning. So.
All right. So I'm looking forward to hear the results of that meeting. But I don't know whether you heard my suggestion about hiring outside professional help to get you through this process, because it just seems clear to me that your understanding of the process is flawed.
We got 3 people that are watching it every day. They're all professional people, so.
Okay. All right, so does anyone else have any other comments? Anyone else care to make any kind of motion on this? I'm ready to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for coming in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
So I would have to wait till after till the next meeting of planning board for release if everything goes on tomorrow.
You may have to wait longer than that. But we're not acting on this tonight, so thank you for coming in. Right. No, nobody on the board's making a motion to release lots, and I'm not going to make that motion either. So I don't really know what else to tell you, but we're not releasing the lots at this time.
Okay.
All right. The next agenda item was a discussion on zoning violations procedures. Jim, do you have comments that you want to start with?
I have no additional comments. Excuse my dogs barking in the background. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm not clear if you're still on the call. Don't worry about it. All right. We have some minutes from the June 16th and the June 20th meetings.
Yes, Mark, that's correct.
Jim, do you want to take us through those?
I believe we had the June 16th minutes previously, but not everyone had a chance to visit those. So I'm hoping that everyone has in the interim. And then the second set is a very brief set from the town meeting. And I haven't heard any comments from anyone. I don't know if you have, Kristen.
I had no comments.
Motion from someone maybe as a pair then to accept those?
I move that we accept the minutes for, what was it?
It was June 16 and June 20th.
20, June 16 and June 20.
Second.
That was me, Kristen. Go ahead. Jim. All right, all those in favor, I'll do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll do the roll call. Jim Ball,
Yes, Mark.
Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Tim Paris,
Yes.
Hazel,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. Is that everything on the agenda, Jim? There's something here, signature page for registry, but I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, so I meant to bring this up at the start of the meeting. As you know, annually, the board needs to sign a signature page for the Registry of Deeds. They require it every year. It doesn't matter how many times you've signed it. It would be appropriate that we put the signature page in the box at the bottom of the stairs in the Forbes building so that you can come in and sign it. The purpose of the page, as you probably know, is so that the Registry of Deeds recognizes your signatures. If I don't do this annually, I'll get a letter from the registrar asking me for it and telling me that they won't accept anything from the board until they have it. So I don't wait till the end. I generally want to do this immediately, and I always do it immediately after an election in case there's any changes. So that, for example, now Tim can sign something in the near future, whether it's a subdivision decision or a special permit or anything, a lot release. As you know, we have a request for lot releases. The board members have to have their signatures notarized. So, and that goes to the Registry of Deeds. So that I will have Kristen put that signature page in an envelope and send you an email. You can come into the Forbes building, and in the planning and building department box, there'll be the signature page. You just sign it. When everyone has signed it, we'll send it to the registry.
Jim, I have a question. Do we have to sign the Mylar from the Mount Pleasant approval that we voted earlier?
When you will, once the engineering department and I have met with Steve and we're satisfied with it. Yes, you will.
All right, so it's not something we could kill two birds with one stone.
Correct. And since we've changed our procedure and we're in phase 3 of the way that we're operating according to state guidelines, we will do the same thing with the Mylars. It will be in a box at the bottom of the stairs. You're always welcome to come in and sign at the planning board if you want. If it's multiple pages, that will probably be preferable. As of right now, it's like 8 pages. So it might be preferable to just have you come into the planning board, lay it out on the table, and have you sign it. You can come into the planning board. Just call us ahead of time, let us know, so we can unlock the door, because as you know, the door is locked.
Right. Well, all right. So we'll just worry about the signature page for now. If everybody could, you're going to email us to let us know when it's in the
Yes.
Downstairs. Okay. All right. Any other issues?
I just wanted to ask Tim Paris, were you able to stop by to sign the 168 Flanders decision? Oh,
Muted. I have not yet. I'll make it a point of getting up there tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Also, just as a reminder, I don't think we have any members present that are on the EDC, other than myself. I have to be sworn in, and if you're on any other town committees, you need to be sworn in before you can vote. Thank you for Tim's getting sworn in for the planning board. You're now familiar with the process. I know, Hazel, you went through it with design review. Many others have gone through it in the past for other boards. But if there are any other town committees you serve on, please go to the clerk and get sworn in.
Hazel, you had your hand up earlier. Anything else? No, you muted yourself.
The other way around. I would just like members of the board to think about this last thing, which was the discussion on zoning violation procedures. And, you know, see if I think it's something that we need to really discuss, because we're having such problems with Village Commons at this point. And I think tomorrow's meeting is going to be somewhat contentious as to what the design review board thinks they need versus what the developer thinks he has provided. And this has delayed it significantly. And I don't feel it is the town's fault on this. I think we have tried to bend over backwards to try to work with this particular developer, and things just haven't gone very well. So I'd like the board to think about the fact of how we can perhaps in future developments work better or be able to deal better with the developer. And we also need to be in a situation where we have something to back us up, so that it isn't this constant back and forth, but we've got some opportunity to say, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen, and be able to carry through on it. So I just want.
We do have a zoning subcommittee. I guess I would like to see them address this first outside of a board meeting. Jim, if you could maybe put that on your agenda next time that group meets.
Sure, if I could. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Mark?
No, go ahead. I think you understand my request.
Yeah, I could do that. As you know, the members of that committee are Tim Paris, myself, the building commissioner, and the chairman of the zoning board of appeals. So there's 4 of us on that group. I think that the answer I'll get from all of those individuals, because we've been together for years, is that it's not anything that we need to write to enter into our bylaws. It's a matter of enforcing the bylaws that we have. So just as a little bit of background on this project, Hazel's brought it up, so I'm going to jump in. This particular project was one of those projects that a developer got permitted and then he immediately flipped it. He sold it to another developer, which is why I emphasized the transferability section of the writings, which requires a developer to come back to the board and let them know that who they've sold the lots to, when they sold them, and confirm that that developer understands the requirements. When that particular project was flipped to Mr. Ansari, we had a meeting with him at the Department of Public Works. It included all of the departments and the then town engineer, Carl Beldoff, and myself. I mentioned Carl because Carl and myself were very heavy-handed, and that's a good word. We were very emphatic that that developer understand that he needed to familiarize himself with the plans and with the subdivision rules and with his approval, his permit. He assured us that he understood everything and that he had everything. By the way, that was 2015. Here we are 5 years later, and he hasn't got a design for his commercial building. In his permit, it says that he needs to get that design approved before he can get more than the 7th occupancy. If he's waited now till the point where he wants the remaining lots and his 7th occupancy, I have to say that's poor project management. All of the other projects that we had before us this evening were represented by an engineer or a builder. Even the last one that we just heard, Rugged Trails, Guaranteed Builders. They're a large company. Many people are familiar with them. There's Silver Hollow Estates, Steve Durrett, their project manager. The Ridings too, Thompson and Liston, their project engineers and project manager. And then what do we get on this last one? You can see the result. He needs a professional project manager. If he had hired someone years ago, we would not be where we are now.
Jim, I guess what I was asking was not a specific condemnation of this project, and while I appreciate that you feel confident in how the zoning subcommittee will respond, I guess I'm just looking for a starting point on this, and I think the zoning subcommittee should be the starting point. That's, to me, I guess, the zoning violations are an issue that the subcommittee should look at, and if there is a need for any changes, you would present it to us, and then we could discuss it as a board and take something at the meeting as needed.
Understood.
So I just, if you come back to us and after your next meeting or whenever you're able to get to this and tell us, the same thing that you just told us, then I'm comfortable with that. But I don't want to just close the book on it tonight. I want to actually go through that process.
Yeah. So
sorry.
A particular project, in the decision, you have a remedy for a problem, and that is that the planning board has a developer in and informs them that you're going to hold a public hearing to discuss the lack of conformance with the zoning approval. The special permit is a zoning approval. It's in our zoning bylaws.
Mark, your comment? I just was going to say, I think that strong enforcement is us simply just what we just did. You don't get your lots. So, I think there are tools here. I think he didn't do what he's supposed to do in his permit, and we said no more lots. I like the idea that you suggested that he hire a professional. We'll see. I don't know if it's money. I don't know what it is. But I think to a great extent, you can't move forward is pretty powerful stuff. It's just a thought.
I would like to point out he's out there building. talk about non-moving forward. He's been building, actually, I just happened to go out there on Sunday when he had a full crew out there, which I then
Yeah,
did.
that's incredible, Hazel.
I did inform the building department about that. So his complaint that he's unable to move forward is not represented by what's going on there.
All right, well, any other issues, any items on the agenda or new business that we?
I just, in my day job, I'm scoring a whole bunch of those, the new, what's it called? Shared Streets program projects that are, and I wondered if Westborough was doing any of them. I don't see Westborough's because I'm in a different district, but.
Is it complete streets or shared streets?
No, it's called Shared Streets. It's like a new thing that it's part of the COVID. It's a reaction to the COVID thing, and it's one of the big aspects of it is providing areas where in streets or in parking spaces where you could have outdoor dining. That's probably the biggest use that we're seeing. There's also other aspects of it, providing bus lanes, increasing the amount of pedestrian space and bicycle space. But the intent of it, it's all supposed to gear towards allowing people to be more socially distanced. And it's not like you can't do huge projects with it. I think for the whole state, it's something like $5 million. So they're planning on something, 5 digits, maybe some of them some towns are only asking for like $15,000 to purchase a bunch of Jersey barriers to block off some parking spaces. Others have big projects where they're building entire parks and building, or at least proposing to. They're being scored based on how they address the purpose of the program, and then also evaluated based on one of the aspects of the scoring has to do with, if they're asking for $300,000 to do some sort of project, the state's probably going to say that would be more appropriate to go under some other program to try to get that money. We're looking for small projects. The biggest aspect of it is that they can turn them around. You can actually implement the entire project within 30 days is the intention. So that's where it's, temporary bike lanes and things like that are.
I mean, I'd certainly like to see Westborough benefit from that program. I think maybe it's not I'm not sure it's I feel
Might
like
be an EDC issue, Jim and Mark.
What's that, Jim?
I would say maybe EDC should be looking into that if there's a way that they can also help some of like the downtown businesses and things.
Yeah,
I know many have done this already, but there may be more opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Board of Selectmen have really taken the leadership role on outdoor dining in town. But I agree, the EDC might be one group that could explore that. Jim, can you reach out on that and see, maybe do a little bit of research and bring it to somebody?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a very good idea about the EDC being involved. Thank you to Mark and to Jim to suggest that. Just so you know, there's a couple groups that were formed about 2 months ago to anticipate the outdoor dining. But in doing that, we're aware of the program, Tim, and Chris Payne is the lead on this. And he has reached out to the town departments to discuss what might be appropriate for us. We're also now active with Complete Streets. We've hired a consultant who's writing our mission statement, and then to proceed beyond that, actually the mission statement portion's done, to participate in the first phase of a plan. We have to have a plan. We hired Green International. Bill Scully is actually the one that's running it for us. We have a Complete Streets group that has its first meeting next week. And I shouldn't really call it the first meeting. We've met several times, but first meeting on this phase to put together the plans. So I'm excited about that. And as you know, there's funding available for the Complete Streets program as well. When we looked at, what are we calling the streets again, Tim? What is the name of this program?
Shared streets.
Shared streets, thank you, yes. So we looked at that, and we looked at that in the downtown, and because we have parking that is head in our downtown, on our main streets, it's difficult to have the shared streets because the cars would back up into the bike lane. Now, we recognize that. It doesn't mean it won't work somewhere else in town. It's just very difficult for that to work on West Main Street, which unfortunately is the #1 bike route in town. We're aware of it. Thank you for bringing it up. I'm going to speak with Chris to see if there's been any movement on that.
Right. Yeah. The only thing, I don't know how long it's going to last. Like I said, so far there's the limited amount. They've already, every week we're scoring the projects that come in. So most districts are getting, anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 different projects every week. We're scoring them, sending one to Boston. They take another week, and then they issue the letters. So they've issued the first 2 rounds of awards. I think they're probably getting ready for issue the 3rd round. But every week they're going to be issuing new ones, and I don't know how much long. There's probably another 4 or 5 weeks left before the money's gone. Whether the state decides to add on, if it's super successful, they may add additional funds. I don't know, but
how involved is the application form? I have not seen it.
It doesn't seem that big of a deal. It's a little, it could be better from my end, but it's just describing the project. You point out the aspects. There's like 5 or 6 different criteria that you have to at least meet one of them.
Exactly.
And and if you meet more of them, great, you score more points. But they, and you have to indicate whether you have an EJ community, environmental justice community in the area that would be served by it. Are there other certain things? Is it near a school where it would provide for kids to get, go back and forth to school? So there's a bunch of things like that you're adding into the application. But some of these, the real brief ones come in, the application is about a 6 or 7 page form that I'm just going down, checking off boxes. Yes, it meets this. It meets this. I verify what they put in the form, and off it goes to the headquarters for the final scoring.
And I'm assuming that the level of service of the street is taken into account. Like if we propose something like this on Lyman Street, it might not be a success because Lyman Street is so heavily traveled. I mean, if I was to say something like would be good to the public beach on Lyman Street, I mean,
well,
already too narrow.
Yeah, it doesn't really, because certainly some of the ones I'm dealing with, they're taking major streets in Somerville, in downtown, where they have Wakefield, they're busy downtowns where they have on-street parking, and they're taking the parking and they're either reallocating it for dining or for bike lanes or for bus lanes, or to widen the sidewalk. So you have a bigger space for people to walk, and, in those areas where there's potentially crowded sidewalks.
So I was thinking this might be an issue for the Bike and Pedestrian Committee too, and we might want to ask them if they've explored this. But given the time, maybe we could take this discussion outside of this meeting. And
yes,
yeah, if you need any, well, officially, I'm not supposed to help with the scoring, potentially directly
have you write the
influence it.
Yeah, we're gonna have you write the application, Tim. Hey,
Yeah.
your district, we're not in your district.
All right.
Yeah, I was given a talking to when I mentioned something about complete streets once, because I score that program as well. And I asked headquarters what sort of advice I should give the town, and I was given a little stern talking to that I was not supposed to be giving advice for that sort of thing. So
How about if you tell us what not to do?
yeah.
All right, any other issues, anything new? All right, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the roll call? Jim Ball,
I agree.
Hazel,
Yes.
Tim Paris,
Yes.
Tim Taylor,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone. Much appreciated.
Jim Robbins, if you want to call me or